Can you imagine if men went through menopause?
No, no. For anyone that has a
Yeah.
partner or a spouse or someone in their lives that is suffering from menopause, they're affected as well. I mean, if you're sleeping next to someone that's having night sweats all
Yeah.
night or heavy flooding bleeding, you're affected. And so having that awareness is extremely helpful and they're grateful. We had someone just the other day in a session say, "Can you help my husband to understand that the painful sex and me not wanting to have sex isn't about him?"
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Integrative Women's Health Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Drummond, founder and CEO of the Integrative Women's Health Institute. And I am here with April Haberman, and I'm so excited to introduce you to her. She is one of our women's health coach graduates, and she has a lot going on in the menopause space. So, first, welcome, April, and we'd love to hear just a quick introduction and then what inspired you to consider transitioning into health coaching as a career?
Thank you for asking that question. I've been thinking about this really over the course of the past couple of days, and it's kind of fun actually to think back on the journey because we don't often take that time to do that. Currently, I'm the CEO and co-founder of Medovia, which is an organization that provides education and support for women in menopause, both in and outside of the workplace. If you would have asked me 10 years ago what I wanted to do, I wouldn't have said menstrual health or menopause health for sure, but I just kind of fell into it, honestly. My daughter asked me over a decade ago what women and girls do if they can't afford to purchase period products, and it cascaded into a 10-year career with a nonprofit in the development space. And I loved working in that space. I truly did. It was very life-giving and rewarding. And being in global women's health, menstrual health, it's a very private topic that I felt privileged to be able to share
Mm.
with so many women around the world. I have favorite memories of sitting under trees in Africa and having conversations about periods. It's truly a
Yeah.
blessing. But I found myself at a point in my career when I had staffing changes with the organization. I was in a different place in my life where I was an empty nester. I worked from home by myself a lot, found myself, isolated a little bit and antsy. So the first thing I did was get my yoga certification and began working with women in that way with that movement modality breath work. And I kept getting questions from friends and people within the community about menopause. I think because I was in the menstrual health, sexual reproductive health space. And I realized that there was a real gap there. So I started searching
Hmm.
for health coaching organizations and began to consider that really about a year ago.
Yeah. And so at the time, did you have any fears or hesitations when you were thinking about transitioning your career into health coaching?
Yes, for sure. At the time, I really didn't understand health coaching fully. And I don't know that anyone does until we begin to go through the program and recognize the beauty of it and the impact that it can have on women or men, whoever you're working with, whoever that audience is. But I had a lot of fear in change, first of all. I have the familiarity
Mm.
of leaving your career that you've known, something that is part of your identity, right? This is who I am. This is what I do. And that comfort
Yeah.
was uneasy. And, the financial aspect, there's an investment that you make in this and your future. So that was a pause button for me as well for a short time period.
Yeah. And so when you decided to take the leap, what were your thoughts at the time, in terms of like, okay, I'm going to take this action and I'm ready to enroll in this program. And it's interesting that you mentioned, okay, this is, nobody really knows what health coaching is until they're really deep in the experience. So you overcame your fears, took that leap. What were you thinking at the time? And then how did it evolve when you actually got into learning this skill set, which is really a little bit unique in the healthcare space?
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Once I decided to take the leap, and I first just want to say that your staff is great. I had multiple conversations with your staff, and probably drove them a little bit crazy with the questions that I was asking. But
No.
they were fantastic and really no pressure. They were there to really help me to make the right decision for me. Right. And so I felt comfortable with that
Mhm.
decision
Mhm.
once I made it. And once I took the leap, I actually quit my job altogether so that I could fast track through the program. Um, it was freeing. It was really freeing and it was really exciting to dive into something new, to learn something new, and to know that I was going to have the ability to work with women and influence their lives in a different way. So I still get to work with women in a whole different manner, right?
Mhm.
And once I started the program and started my accountability group with a couple of other women and began practicing and learning, again, it was freeing and exciting. It's hard to describe the freedom that it brought and the excitement to have something new in my life, frankly. That community that you create with the program is wonderful.
Thank you so much. And, you're so right. And I appreciate you really saying that about our career coaching team, especially. They really do hold everyone's hand, take their time. We actually don't want people in the program who aren't a good fit. We really want it to be aligned with your vision. And then a lot of times, once people get into the program, and it sounds like this was a bit for you because you had this like complete clean slate. You were making a transition still with an underlying value and mission driven about helping women from a healthcare perspective and just life perspective. But for yourself, you came in with this clean slate, new career shift, and we always start the program with visioning work. So, what was the vision for you and how has it evolved over the last year? Because vision is such a living thing. It's always evolving as you actually live into that vision. So how has that experience been for you to actually get a little self-nourishment within this program even before you're working with other women?
Yeah, that was really one of the most beautiful parts of the program. Honestly, I do a lot of dream boarding, a lot of vision boarding with women in my previous career, and to have that space and have someone hold that space for
Mhm.
me really was emotional, to be honest. It brought a lot. I brought up a lot of emotions in a good way because I haven't had the opportunity or haven't given myself permission to do that, I guess, or just taken the time to do it. So when I first walked through that process with my master coach, actually, I didn't know. And I think that was part of the emotion because I hadn't given myself that space to really dream and to aspire and to look forward, 12 months, 2 years, 5 years. So it was emotional. And at the time, I really didn't know. I walked into this program with hands held open to receive and just to allow things and life to unfold, and whatever that is, right? Let's just walk into it freely. I
Mhm.
knew that I
Mhm.
wanted a change in my life. I knew that I wanted to have time with my family, my husband, to reconnect, to work with women. There was a vision there in some aspect, but there was also um, wide open, wide open field, right? Where is it going to take me? And it had some fear, but there was also some trepidation, but there was also excitement going into that. And, fast forward, a year later, and I have the ability to work with women in coaching. I also have the ability to work in more of a trainer role. So I feel like I get a little bit of both. I get to teach, but I also get to coach, which is completely different, as you know, than taking that prescriptive role, right?
Yes, yes. So now you're a co-founder in this organization and you specialize in working with women in perimenopause and menopause transition, in general, but also specifically in the workplace. And, for our clients or students who are considering this program or who are in it now and are still kind of feeling a little blank spacey about their niche and their vision, describe a bit the day to day and the work that you do, especially in terms of working with menopause in the workplace, because that's such a hot topic, such a desired topic by large organizations that I think there's so much room for growth there. I'd love to learn more about what your practice actually looks like, what your work actually looks like.
Sure, sure. It's actually a great question. And there's not a single answer because it really depends on the clients that we're working with. It depends on the company, right? The industry. So that's a privilege as well. We get to work across industries. But really, what we're seeing is that for our organization, we typically come in with training sessions. So we'll come into an organization and we'll host awareness sessions for employees and HR professionals, managers, for example. And then typically we have subsequent sessions on HRT or MHT, whatever you want to call it, the hormone therapy, nutrition, gut health. We dive
Hmm.
deeper as we move into that relationship and comfort level with organizations. And then typically what happens is that there are a lot of questions on the back end from individuals. And that's where that individual support comes into play, where we're able to use our coaching skills, health coaching skills, to help those individuals to signpost
Hmm.
resources and get them the help that they need, because it's a real struggle with women in perimenopause and menopause, as you know. There are other companies, healthcare companies, telehealth organizations that actually are beginning to fold in or have folded in the health coaching as part of their programs, many actually, and it can be really beneficial. We find that having an integrative approach with those telehealth organizations is extremely beneficial for women or anyone going through menopause, because you have your medical care and you have your health coaching on the back end, and it's a beautiful partnership. So it really depends. There's not a single answer to that.
And so, what are some of the most common questions you're getting from the management, from the HR teams, and then from the women themselves? Are they similar? Are they different?
Yeah, the initial questions from organizations are: is it even a need? Is this a real thing? Right? Do we have to talk
Mm,
about menopause? Is
mm,
this a thing? And really, it's the right thing to do because there are a lot of women that are struggling in menopause in the workplace. So we find that we have to build the business case with organizations. And typically, it's your ERG groups that are using their voice collectively to push the agenda forward in organizations. Once we host those training sessions with managers and employees, the feedback has been really positive. I'm so glad that you brought this in. I didn't realize, I didn't understand. So it really shatters the stigma and shame. It breaks down the myths and misunderstanding, and it bridges that gap for employees and managers so that they can better communicate, and organizations can then begin to support women so that they're thriving in the workplace and they're not suffering. From individuals that are going through menopause, once we deliver those education and awareness trainings and begin to work with them in more of a coaching role, what we're finding is that there's just a lot of confusion. There's misinformation, there's a lot of confusion,
Mm.
there's a lot of fear, because I think it come for what we're hearing, it's coming back to the study in 2002 from WHI, HRT. I can't take that. You fill in the blank on those fears that they have, and it's really just helping them to find the resources that are evidence based that can help them manage through those symptoms. And then also um, helping them to break down that symptom management can be like peeling an onion back, frankly, right? It's so complicated with women in menopause and perimenopause
Of
that
course.
they
Yeah.
don't know where to start. So that's where that coaching piece comes into place. Where do I even start? I have, all of these symptoms that I'm suffering from in my gut, and I can't eat this. And what am I supposed to eat? And I'm gaining weight. And so it's breaking it down into the SMART goals that are achievable, that we find the most helpful for women.
And I can imagine that, especially at work for women, in their 40s and 50s, mid to late 50s, they're really, in many cases, at peak levels in their careers. So there's benefit to the organization to keep that talent. There's benefit to the women to be able to continue to progress and grow longer in their careers. I mean, how many
Mm,
men are we seeing now in their 70s and even 80s leading organizations, continuing to work optimally? And I think this is all possible, but we do have to have that workplace support for women to be able to navigate this. My dad is in his career, he's now in his late 70s and more or less retired. I don't know that he ever will, but he was an executive in HR, and I think they just didn't understand. Periodically when I started talking about
mhm.
menopause, he was like, "Oh my gosh, now that I think back, probably some of the women that we either lost or I didn't understand like why they were like going through these changes and shifts, and not just physically, but emotionally, and sort of second guessing their careers and thinking about like throwing it all, because the
Huge.
mental health struggles of menopause are also important. So I think it's so valuable that not just the women understand the complexity for themselves and where to start, but as you're so brilliantly educating their management teams,
Mhm.
the men on the teams, because can you imagine if men went through menopause?
No, no. I can't.
Yeah.
And I don't
Yeah.
think they can either,
No,
we
no.
we have anonymous, feedback mechanisms that are built into the programs, and the feedback that
Mm.
we get from men is really positive. For anyone that has a
Yeah.
partner or a spouse or someone in their lives that is suffering from menopause, they're affected as well. I mean, if you're sleeping next to someone that's having night sweats all
Yeah.
night or heavy flooding bleeding, you're affected. And so having that awareness is extremely helpful, and they're grateful. We had someone just the other day in a session say, "Can you help my husband to understand that the painful sex and me not wanting to have sex isn't about him?" And so it does help with communication and relationships as well, interesting enough.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the vast majority of male partners and managers, really do want to be
Mhm.
helpful, but they just have zero insight into what's going on. And so with women are confused enough with the
Right.
2002 Women's Health Initiative study. And then, I think the other challenge that we have in menopause right now is that there's a conversation that's a little almost oversimplified in the backlash to the Women's Health Initiative, and
Right.
that everyone just needs hormones, which is certainly a piece of the puzzle. But it's so important that you're now bringing in the coaching piece and all of the integrative aspects of menopausal health. How do you think that's changing this conversation from first a fear of hormones to everyone should have hormones all the time to there's some balanced and nuanced conversation around this.
Yeah, I am so glad you brought that up because there is a lot of noise out there, and I think on one hand it's a positive that we have so many celebrities talking about menopause because it's bringing it out into the open and it's beginning to bring menopause center stage, and so it's pushing the agenda forward
Mm-hmm.
with
True.
research funding. We need more research, period, and really beginning to normalize the conversation.
Yeah.
That being said, there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of emphasis on HRT. And while HRT can be really beneficial in some cases, we believe in choice. And we also know that it isn't just a singular answer, right? There isn't just a one and done. We have to, whatever we've been doing pre-menopause, perimenopause isn't going to work for us in
Mm-hmm.
menopause and
Mm-hmm.
postmenopause. We have to look at our entire lifestyle and our
Right.
our nutrition, our exercise so that we are at lower risk of osteoporosis, for example. So, yes, hormones can help and
Mm-hmm.
right. There's an and there. It's not a singular answer. And hormones might not be for everyone, and not everyone can take hormones, right? We know that there are contraindications. We know that there are women that are going through certain cancer treatments, for example, that can't take hormones. So, those supplements and some of those complementary
Mm-hmm.
lifestyle modalities can be extremely beneficial. So, I think you have to look at the whole picture. We always say, let's present the entire buffet and then you get to choose what you want to eat from that buffet, right? You get to choose.
Love that. It's such a coaching perspective and such a client centered perspective that I think is really what's missing in the conversation. So I'm glad you're bringing that to larger organizations and then ultimately to the individual women who work there.
Absolutely.
So I think your journey is really inspiring for people, a transition, a career transition in midlife yourself, which is so inspiring. And then the work that you're doing is, you know, very aligned with your original mission and purpose around helping to support women and women's health, just in a little bit of a different way. So, any final thoughts you would like to share with people who are considering becoming women's health coaches and any inspiration for them?
Health coaching is really evolving. We're seeing it more and more and more. As I mentioned earlier, it's beginning to get folded into healthcare. The importance and the recognition of the importance of
Mhm.
health coaching, I think, is becoming more common. So there are plenty of opportunities out there in various areas. It doesn't have to be menopause, right? We're finding nutrition coaches are extremely helpful for women in midlife as well. So opportunities are endless in this field right now. I think you can make it whatever you want to. And so that would be my advice. Like just take the leap, make the phone call, talk to some people. I would also just kind of say thank you to you, Jessica, for running such a fantastic program with the Integrative Women's Health Institute because there is help at every step of the way and support at every step of the way. There isn't just a cliff that you reach at the end of the program. I love that we can hop on weekly calls. We've got our Facebook group and so there is that sense of community as well that I think that women are thirsty for that we get with your program.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much, April. I'm really excited to see what's in store for you and the expansion of the work that you and your company are doing. I think it's so important because A woman's career, I think especially, it's important at any point in her life, but I think especially from midlife and beyond when her identity might be shifting from, in some cases, women were mothers and now they're empty nesters. I just think this is such a valuable time for women's careers to not be negatively impacted by their health, to possibly be expanded and even more supported by having better health now that they have a little more time and financial resources to actually take care of themselves and reevaluate all of this, like where they want to go with their careers.
I couldn't agree more, right? It's a time for them to thrive and to really reinvent and renew and have a little bit of self-care. We call it radical self-care over here at Medovia. Radical self-care at this age and stage. Yeah. So thanks
Yes.
so much for having me on as well.
Thanks so much for being here. And thanks so much, everyone, for joining us for this week's Integrative Women's Health podcast. We'll see you next week.